Before the pharaohs, before the pyramids, and long before Egypt rose from the Nile, there was another world, a civilization now buried beneath time, beneath the desert, and perhaps beneath the ocean itself. A world that may have created the very idea of gods. Archaeologists have long believed that civilization began around 5,000 years ago in Mesopotamia and Egypt. But what if the story is older, much older? What if Egypt's glory was not the beginning of human civilization, but the echo of something far greater that came before it? In the shadow of the Great Pyramid, scientists have uncovered evidence that challenges everything we thought we knew about history. And it begins not with Egypt's kings, but with forgotten builders whose names have vanished, but whose fingerprints remain in stone. In 2015, a team of researchers exploring beneath the Giza plateau discovered signs of erosion. Erosion not caused by sand or wind, but by water. Massive channels and deep grooves etched into the base of the Sphinx suggest it once stood in torrential rain, rainfall Egypt hasn't seen in over 10,000 years. Dr. Robert Schoch, archaeologist, on camera. The weathering patterns on the Sphinx indicate a level of precipitation that simply didn't exist in the time of the pharaohs. This monument may have been carved thousands of years earlier, possibly as far back as 10,500 BCE. If that's true, then who carved the Sphinx? Who were the people who stood on the edge of the Nile long before the desert came and built monuments that would outlast continents? Some researchers believe they belonged to an unknown civilization, one that vanished before recorded history, leaving only fragments, cyclopean walls, impossible alignments, and myths of gods descending from the stars. Every civilization has a creation story. The Egyptians told of a time they called Zep Tepi, the first time when the gods walked the earth. According to temple inscriptions, this was the era when Osiris, Isis, and Thoth brought knowledge to humanity, agriculture, writing, and architecture. But some Egyptologists now wonder, was Zep Tepi not a myth, but a memory? Beneath the sands of the Sahara lie traces of what may have once been rivers, lakes, and cities. Using ground-penetrating radar, scientists have detected geometric patterns, long straight lines, and rectangular structures hidden beneath dunes that have been dry for over 8,000 years. Dr. Linda Moulton Howe, investigative researcher. What we're looking at could be the remnants of an ancient human settlement that predates not just Egypt, but every known civilization on Earth. It's possible that the builders of Giza were inheritors, not inventors. In other words, Egypt may have risen upon the bones of a forgotten world, a world erased by catastrophe. Geological records reveal that around 12,800 years ago, the Earth underwent a sudden, violent shift, a global flood known as the Younger Dryas event. Massive ice sheets melted, sea levels rose over 400 feet, and entire coastlines disappeared beneath the waves. Dr. Graham Hancock, historical researcher. If you lower the sea level by just 400 feet, vast areas of land reappear, areas that were once habitable. And on those now submerged plateaus, we are finding structures that resemble pyramids and temples. The implication is staggering. An advanced civilization wiped clean by the flood. Across the world, from the coast of India to the Caribbean, sonar has revealed strange formations beneath the ocean. Pyramids, stepped terraces, and circular stone temples. One of the most striking is found off the coast of Japan, the Yonaguni Monument, a series of massive, right-angled platforms that appear carved directly into bedrock. Mainstream scientists call it natural, but divers who've explored the site claim it's unmistakably human. Dr. Masaki Kimura, geologist. The geometry is too perfect. Terraces, staircases, columns. This structure was made by human hands, and it sank when the seas rose about 10,000 years ago. 10,000 years ago. The same period Egypt's own legends say the gods ruled on earth. Coincidence? Or could the lost world that built the first gods have stretched across the entire planet? Cut to montage, pyramids of Egypt, temples of Mexico, ruins of Indonesia. From the sands of Giza to the jungles of Indonesia, the fingerprints are the same. Impossible stonework, cosmic alignments, and myths of sky beings teaching humans the secrets of civilization. These were not primitive people carving random rocks. They were scientists, astronomers, and builders whose knowledge would later be reborn as Egypt. Music rises, epic tone. Narrator. So the question remains, before Egypt's dynasties, before written history, who were these builders, and where did they come from? Fade to black. Narrator, whispering, perhaps the answer lies beneath Egypt itself. Narrator, low suspenseful tone. Deep beneath the sands of Egypt, far below the tourist paths and the pyramids that pierce the sky, lies another world. A network of tunnels, shafts, and chambers carved into the bedrock thousands of years before the first pharaoh took the throne.
In 1999, archaeologists investigating near the Great Pyramid discovered what became known as the Osiris Shaft, a mysterious water-filled chamber descending more than 100 feet below the Giza Plateau. Inside, divers found sarcophagi made of massive granite blocks submerged in pitch-black water. But here's the mystery. There were no inscriptions, no royal markings, no signs of who was buried there or why. Dr. Zahi Hawass, Egyptologist, on camera. We called it the Tomb of Osiris because of the layout, 3 levels connected by shafts, ending in a central chamber surrounded by 4 pillars. But there's no doubt this structure predates the dynastic Egyptians. Narrator. Predates the dynastic Egyptians. That means it could belong to a civilization so old, even the builders of the pyramids saw it as ancient. Soft rising hum, cinematic tension builds. Egyptian myth tells us that Osiris, the god of the underworld, ruled during a golden age when the Nile flowed higher, the deserts were green, and gods walked among men. Was Osiris simply a myth, or could the Osiris Shaft be the final echo of a real ancient king, one remembered as a god? Cut to aerial shot of the Nile River winding through desert. Around the Nile, dozens of similar subterranean sites have been documented. Hidden chambers in Saqqara, Abydos, and Luxor, sealed by earthquakes and sandstorms. Some contain strange carvings showing beings with elongated skulls holding spheres of light, images that appear almost technological. Dr. Mohammed Ibrahim, Egyptologist. These reliefs are often interpreted as religious symbols, but when you compare them to other ancient depictions from Sumeria, from Peru, you begin to notice a pattern. They all show knowledge being handed down by advanced beings. Narrator. Handed down. That phrase appears again and again in the world's oldest texts. The gods descended. The knowledge was given. The builders came from the stars. But what if those ancient words were not poetry, but memory? Fades ancient temple walls lit by torchlight. In the temple of Abydos, one of Egypt's oldest sanctuaries, carved on a massive stone lintel are what appear to be images of a helicopter, a submarine, and even a jet-like craft. To mainstream archaeology, these are palimpsests, carvings that overlapped accidentally over time. But to those who look deeper, they seem like fragments of a forgotten technology, a civilization that understood engineering far beyond what history allows. Short silence, echo of dripping water resumes. Narrator, softly. Could the builders beneath the Nile have been survivors? The last architects of a world destroyed in the flood of 12,800 years ago? Dr. Graham Hancock, clip. If you were part of a global civilization that was collapsing, where would you go to rebuild? You'd go somewhere stable, fertile, like the Nile Valley. You'd bring your knowledge of astronomy, geometry, and stone engineering with you. And to the future generations who rediscovered your ruins, you'd look like gods. Narrator. Across Egypt, traces of this inheritance remain. Massive stone blocks weighing hundreds of tons, cut with a precision impossible even with modern tools. At Abu Rawash, ancient quarries show saw marks that seem to curve, as if made by giant circular saws. In Luxor, a single unfinished obelisk lies cracked in the ground, over 1,000 tons of granite, perfectly shaped before it split. The question is, how? Low mechanical hum, metal on stone sound effect. Some suggest the ancient builders used copper chisels and dolerite pounding stones, but those tools can barely scratch granite. Others believe they harnessed sound, light, or vibration, technologies that mimic modern acoustic cutting. Dr. Christopher Dunn, engineer. When you analyze the precision of the cuts inside the Great Pyramid, you find tool marks consistent with machine-level engineering, not hand tools. These were not primitive builders. They were engineers. Narrator. Engineers, or gods. Perhaps in the eyes of early humans, there was no difference. Music softens, ancient Egyptian harp strings. The mythology of Egypt tells us of Thoth, the god of wisdom, who wrote the laws of the universe and gave humans the gift of writing, measurement, and time. But in the texts, Thoth is not divine in the way we imagine. He is a teacher, a messenger. He comes from the island of fire in the west, said to have vanished beneath the sea. Some believe this is a memory of Atlantis, not a mythical paradise, but a real civilization destroyed by cataclysm, whose survivors carried their knowledge to the Nile. Flash montage, stormy seas, collapsing temples, a torch flaring in darkness. If that's true, then Egypt wasn't the beginning of civilization. It was its rebirth. Narrator, firm, reflective. The Osiris shaft, the tunnels of Saqqara, the unexplainable engineering of the pyramids, they all whisper the same story. Someone was here before. Someone who knew the secrets of the stars, of mathematics, of stone. Someone whose memory became the gods. Music swells, slow crescendo, then silence. And if Egypt was the echo of that lost world, then maybe, just maybe, the truth lies not in what we've already found, but in what remains buried. Low rumbling, fade to black. Narrator, whispering, because beneath the Nile, something still sleeps. Narrator, calm, reflective. When night fell over the ancient Nile, the people looked up and saw not emptiness, but memory. Every star, every constellation was a god, a symbol, a message written in the language of the sky.
Long before astronomers and telescopes, the ancient Egyptians charted the heavens with astonishing precision. They knew the exact rising and setting of Sirius, the star they called Supdet, whose first appearance in the dawn sky signaled the annual flooding of the Nile. This flood wasn't just water, it was life, and to them it was a divine cycle, the heartbeat of the gods themselves.
But how did they know so much? How did people we call early farmers measure cosmic movements that even modern science took centuries to rediscover? Because, in their own words, they were taught. Priestly text from the Temple of Dendera. The stars were placed in their order by the followers of Horus, they who came from the distant land across the great water. The followers of Horus. According to the oldest Egyptian myths, they were semi-divine beings, teachers, healers, builders, who came to Egypt long before the pharaohs. They were said to have ruled during the Zep Tepi, the first time when gods walked beside man and the world was new. Modern researchers like Robert Bauval noticed something remarkable. The layout of the three pyramids of Giza aligns almost perfectly with the three stars of Orion's belt. And when you map their position back in time to around 10,500 BCE, that alignment becomes exact. At that time, Orion rose due south over the horizon, mirrored by the Sphinx facing east toward the rising sun on the spring equinox. Coincidence? Or memory? Bauval. It's as if the pyramids were built as a message, a marker in stone, saying, "This is when it began." Narrator. But who was Orion to the ancients? To them, Orion was Osiris, the god of resurrection and the underworld. His wife, Isis, was represented by Sirius, the brightest star in the sky. Together, their celestial dance told the story of death and rebirth, not just of gods, but of civilizations. It's a story echoed across the world. In the temples of Teotihuacan, Mexico, the pyramids align with Orion. In the Andes, ancient builders carved stone windows to mark the solstices. And in Göbekli Tepe, Turkey, the oldest known temple on Earth, dating back to 9000 BCE, the pillars seemed to map constellations that would have been visible only in that same epoch. The stars, it seems, were the common language of a forgotten world. So who were these sky-gazing builders? Were they simply early humans? Or were they remembering someone, something older? Egyptian myths speak of Ra, the sun god who traveled across the sky by day and through the underworld by night. But hidden within those stories are clues of advanced celestial knowledge, eclipses, stellar precession, and even the tilt of Earth's axis. To encode such precision in myth suggests more than imagination. It suggests science, hidden in story. Perhaps the myths were never meant to be literal. Perhaps they were warnings, instructions from the survivors of an earlier world, written in symbols that could outlast stone, because stone lasts longer than memory. The Great Sphinx may be the oldest surviving piece of that message. Geologist Dr. Robert Schoch found evidence of deep water erosion on its body, not from desert wind, but from heavy rainfall. Such rain hasn't fallen in Egypt since around 10,000 BCE, the very time when the Orion alignment occurred. That would mean the Sphinx, and perhaps Giza itself, was carved long before the Egyptian civilization even existed. Dr. Robert Schoch. We're looking at something built at the end of the last ice age. This monument was inherited, not invented. Narrator. Inherited. That word again, it keeps appearing like a ghost through time. Everywhere we look, from the pyramids to the myths, we find echoes of something older, a memory passed down through cataclysm and silence. And maybe that's why the ancients worshipped the stars, not because they came from them, but because they remembered someone who did. In the Book of the Dead, there's a passage that reads, "I am one with those who dwell in the stars. My soul comes from the imperishable ones who live forever in the sky." To most, it's poetry. To others, it's a clue. Because the imperishable stars are not random. They're the stars that never set below the horizon. To the ancient Egyptians, they were the realm of the undying gods, beings who came, taught, and then returned to the heavens. Could it be that what we call gods were actually the remnants of an advanced civilization, survivors of an earlier age who encoded their existence in myth so we would one day remember? Maybe that's why the Egyptians built in stone, not to glorify kings, but to keep a promise that one day, when the stars realign, we would remember who built the first gods. And as the constellations slowly drift across the heavens, the story begins again. A story written not in ink or paper, but in starlight. Before Egypt, there was another world, a world of stone and starfire, of gods who may have been men, and men who remembered gods. The monuments we see today are only fragments, messages carved in silence, waiting for us to listen. Maybe the pyramids, the Sphinx, the myths of Osiris and Thoth were never about worship. Maybe they were warnings, reminders of what happens when knowledge fades and history begins again.
Because under every pyramid, beneath every grain of sand, the story continues to whisper. There was a world before Egypt, and one day it may rise again. You've been watching The Hidden Current. If the past still calls to you, follow the current and subscribe for more stories buried in time.